Okay? Yes, ma'am. No,
Would we have to wait to ask a question?
that's okay.
When we had the meeting the last time, I think that the officer said you could phone if you saw underage drinking, well, all underage drugs, a fight break out, or maybe selling drugs.
Mhm.
But he said that you had to have like something concrete, like really visual, not just a suspicion.
Well, I would suggest to you, I mean, if you just see it one time, okay, if you see something one time, you want to be a little bit more thorough in your observations. But if you see something that's been going on for a little while, you know, when I'm saying like a continuous period, you're seeing these cars pull up for just a quick second. You know, if you have the ability to get a description of that car, the description of the individual that might be involved, as much information as you can provide, that benefits us, okay? When we get tag numbers, when we get descriptions of people, if you hear somebody call somebody by a nickname, whatever that may be, those things are beneficial. So, you know, sometimes when we're just talking about something that you're calling that might be going on just for the moment, for that particular, I can't promise you that if you pick up the phone and say, I see these cars going in and out, you know, right now, I can't say that we're going to be there like that. I can't make that promise. But I can tell you as an investigative group, we can be more, we're going to take our time in trying to determine, you know, who's doing what in that particular house, who's doing what on that particular corner. That's our job. And I promise you that sometimes it can be a short period of time when there's a conclusion. It might be 6 months. But I'll tell you the reason why it's 6 months or more is because we're trying to do the very best job we can so we get rid of your problem. We don't want to be in a situation where we're doing this and your problem still exists. So wouldn't you rather have us do the job right the first time than us having to keep coming back? That's the goal. And that's the goal of the department. Yes, ma'am.
Back in January, my street actually had a problem with 3 robberies. And we circulated, the neighbor and I circulated a letter basically telling the community that we've enjoyed a safe community. We really encouraged neighborliness throughout the entire tenure that we've had in the neighborhood, and that we have always had high expectation of our neighbors, and we encouraged everyone, knowing that these robberies had taken place, to be careful, to leave a light on,
Yes.
to clean your yard up, to talk with each other. You know, basically, be sure that people recognize that we're a friendly neighborhood, that we do watch out after each other. And before we had the letter even circulated, there was a bus on the street. I had the feeling at the time that perhaps the person that was aware of who was having the problem was reported. I'm not positive. I know
Sure, I
about
understand.
that. But at the same time, my sons were in from California, and I circulated that letter. Within 3 days, they were in from California. They had spent the night over in Flower Valley, and one of them had gone out and came home the next day, and a friend dropped his bag off. When the friend drove over and dropped the bag off, I guess as a result of, we had circulated the letter, there had been this bus, a policeman came to my door and had seen someone drop a bag off at my son wasn't living, he was just staying for like 2 weeks in my home, because he's going to school in California.
Sure.
And naturally, I just said, well, yes, come in, you know, do what you want to do. They stopped the van where the kids had dropped the bag off. Nothing was found.
Right.
No bust was made. And I'm going to tell you, it was very scary.
Right, sure.
And on top of that, I didn't even think to ask for a search warrant or identification from the policeman.
Right.
You know, I didn't even think about it, because it could have been anybody.
It could have been, yes.
So, you know, we do as a community, I think we have to take very literal steps and, you know, being safe, you know,
Yes.
turning towards lights on. Leave a light on in the kitchen during the day.
Yes.
Some of these robberies can occur within 15 minutes of the time the neighbor drives out of the driveway. If you see lights on in a kitchen, most people are under the assumption someone is there. the leave lights on. It doesn't cost that much money.
Right.
And it's a hell of a lot less expensive than paying to get the insurance company out there to replace your precious heirlooms.
I would totally agree. I mean, and this is what, again, this is just a part of making your community safe. I mean, you know, again, that observation that you see that it just doesn't look right, again, I would say to you that, you know, there's nothing wrong with picking up the phone. It doesn't cost you anything. Pick up the phone. It does, if it's not an emergency, of course, I encourage you to dial the non-emergency number for 911 for us at dispatch, which is 301-279-8000, or you can dial 311 and get there. But the bottom line is that we encourage you to pick up the phone and call us. I will also give you the number for our text-a-tip line. We have, where we know cell phones are very popular these days, and one of the best ways for us to get the information, and again, through anonymous information, is that, and you remain completely anonymous, we provide you a text-a-tip line, where you can actually just tip us text us the information if you so choose, or you can pick up the phone and call us, and we'll take that information just the same. If you want to speak to an investigator, my investigators are basically directed by me to pick up the phone when we get the complaint and it says contact that complainant. Their job is, as soon as they get that complaint, their job is to pick up the phone and call you and to see what additional information they may need from you or what information you may be able to provide for them in order for them to conduct their investigation, okay? And I expect them to keep you in the loop as far as getting back with you about the information as far as how things go. Now, we can't really describe to you every phase of the investigation, you know, in most cases, but we will basically kind of give you information as far as how things are going, and they really are, they can be very responsive in that way. Okay. And again, you know, when you're talking about, and when we were talking about the break-ins, and I know this is a little bit outside of what the discussion is tonight, but it's all relative. When we talk about that, you know, a lot of burglars like to work during the daytime. You know, they like to work that the minute that somebody said, the minute that you drive out of the driveway, they've already been watching you. Okay, for the most part, that might be the case. Or what they do is they like to go ring your doorbell, okay, in the middle of the day, 10 o'clock in the morning. They'll ring your doorbell and wait for your response. And when you don't respond within their time frame, then that's when they usually walk around the back side of the house, and that's when they'll make entry into your house, okay? Sometimes we have times people say, yeah, you know, as a matter of fact, I did see a guy going down the street ringing doorbells, okay? You know, again, that's crucial to the neighborhood watch. That's a sign that if this guy rings the doorbell and he doesn't really have, and if you answer the door and he walks away, you know, I would probably pick up the phone and call if he's in my neighborhood, okay? Yes, ma'am, let me get her and then I'll ask.
Now, well, what happens if the police find that this young person is selling drugs? And what's the punishment, or what happens in Montgomery County?
Well, it's a variety of things. A lot of factors fall into play. And it depends on what level the drug dealer in particular is. You know, if you get somebody who's selling small amounts of marijuana or small amounts of crack cocaine, they're usually brought into the court, and depending upon their criminal history, has a great deal to do with about how much punishment they get. If their criminal history is minimal, they're probably going to be given a higher rate of probation versus going to jail for any considerable amount of time. If they do have some criminal history or some significant criminal history, depending upon the drug, that depends on exactly how much time. If we look at it from, like, for example, marijuana, their penalties are a little bit less than possession of cocaine, for example, if you compare the two. Okay, so I'll tell you is that I always find this to be an interesting story. I have been in the drug enforcement section. This is my 4th time back into this division. I've been as an investigator twice, okay? I've been as a corporal, I've been as a sergeant, and now as a lieutenant. Some of the same names that I dealt with, okay, in 1994, we deal with them today, okay? So that kind of gives you an example of how long people stay in the game, and how sometimes jail is not the ultimate deterrent for them to do what they do, okay? So that's just an example. So we do our very best to provide the best case possible to present it to the prosecutor, who does a very good job of prosecuting our cases, and then giving them to the judges, and then it's up to the judges to give them that ultimate sentence. And so I'll tell you, you know, in some cases we're very good at that, and then again, in some cases we may not be so great. And so we have to really, again, you know, do the best we can to have the best case possible. Yes, sir.
It's my understanding that a fellow, I hope I've got the name right, Cody Wilkins, was recently arrested for something like 40 counts of burglary. According to the Gazette, he's the guy who left his cell phone behind being charged in one of his victims' houses. It's my understanding, of course, this is all just allegations, he's not been convicted yet, but he allegedly claims that it was due to his OxyContin addiction that he burglarized some 40 homes. So my question is, very hypothetical, but what would have happened if a neighborhood watch had been able to point out his OxyContin dealer to you all?
We would
probably would not have happened, right?
It's likely it probably would not have happened. I can't absolutely say it would not have happened, because if Cody had decided to find another Oxy dealer, he could possibly do that. But if we get the information that somebody's selling Oxy, we get the information in the community, we're going to do our very best to target that individual in order to try to stop them from selling OxyContin. So it's no doubt about it. But again, you know, that's an example of what happens when people get addicted to these drugs, some of the things that they do in order to, you know, enhance their habits. Yes, ma'am.
Can you give us a scenario of how, what would happen in a school, like an elementary school, when someone is trying to give or sell drugs to a student, maybe another student or an adult?
Right.
Child?
What I would tell you hypothetically, if we had that type of an investigation, what we would do is we normally work with school staff in order to deal with that if it's on school property within the school. We have very unique, and I say a good relationship with Montgomery County Public Schools, with most principals in those schools when dealing with these issues.
So my question really is, for the child.
Sure.
Can you give us an idea, or as a parent, to understand how it might go down, what would
Ooh.
actually happen, how would it happen? So we can be more aware maybe of how to
Well,
teach our children what to watch out for.
What I would tell you is most of this, if there's drug dealing going on at schools, unless it's a student within the school, most of the time it's outside. Okay, so it's outside of the doors of the school per se. They might be on school property, but kids, trust me, if you talk to your kids, and I highly encourage everybody, I have 3, okay? I have 3 children. 2 of them are now adults, but when they were growing up, they knew that their doors could not be locked in my home, okay? That's my home. You don't lock my door if I don't give you the permission to do so. They have their space in their rooms, but that meant that I could search their space whenever I so chose. And if I thought that there was some suspicious activity going on within their rooms, then Daddy or Mommy would come in and we searched and we looked. Thank God, I'm blessed to say that none of my children have been involved in drugs. But I will tell you that parents have to be aware, okay? You have to be aware of what your children are doing. I can tell you that children are preyed upon very easily, and they are very easily tempted to try new things. And so there are people who out here that will, on a friendly note, may say to them in school, oh, I have something to give you. I got these pills that they look really cool. They're pink, you know, and they got this really cool thing that's on them. And they say, oh, just put them on your tongue and they like melt and you'll feel good. And kids do it, okay? So